So. Whenever you guys are ready.
Well, I am Corporal Anderson. I've been here at Western for 21 years. Before this, I worked for the ambulance service locally, to respond to emergencies in the county. And, yeah, that's sort of my thing. Dustin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Officer Foreman. I'm actually just in my first year here at Western. As he mentioned, one of the reasons I was picked for this is I've got a little bit of a background. I graduated here in Western. I'm from Macomb. So I worked at the 911 center for McDonough County through college. And did that for a number of years. And then I was a deputy sheriff for the sheriff's office for about 7 years. And then decided to come here. So I've got a note, kind of a list of things that I've thought of. Weather's one of those things like we as police officers just kind of roll with things as they come at us. You don't really think about it, but as I was thinking about weather stuff, I started my list and it just kept getting longer and longer because it really does affect us in a lot of ways. So also, as I'm rambling here, if you have any questions, just interrupt me. So I'll start off with, as winter's coming up, one of the things with winter is a lot of what we do is driving, okay? So our emergency response with snow and ice and everything is obviously slowed. Here on campus, obviously we never have too far to go, so that helps. When I worked for the sheriff's office, I had the whole county to patrol. So we would have accidents and stuff like that, so that would hinder your response times.
All we do, I mean, us as being from the university, our jurisdictionally, right, we've got the entire county as our jurisdiction. But we primarily stay on our campus or close to campus. But in situations where there is a big problem or where there's a lot of problem, then we do kind of end up getting called all over wherever we certainly can be called, wherever. So you have to be at least aware where everything is, the county kind of is. And then you factor in like Hornfield campus, there's a chance we'd have to go out there and stuff. So it does expand our zone a little bit.
Yeah, that's something I've run into a lot since I've started here is a lot of students don't realize. Sometimes they don't even realize that we're actually police, they think that we're security or something like that. We are police. As Ted just said, we have jurisdiction actually in any county in the state that Western owns property. So there's times we have to go up to the Quad Cities campus for things. Obviously, if it's an emergency, we can't get there. It would take a couple hours, so they have to handle emergencies, but there are times we go up there. Another thing related to winter is cold weather. We, bundle up just like everybody else. We have coats, we have gloves, makes it harder to use all our equipment. Another thing that's huge that happens a lot is when it's icy out, there's a lot of hills on campus. We're on foot a lot, we fall. So we try to minimize that. One thing I've always had in the winter is a thing called yak tracks. So you put it on your boots, it has metal wrapped around. That kind of plants you on the ice. Crashes, obviously nobody can drive in the snow the first few snows, and so we have a lot of that. My experience at the county, when we would have our first few big snowfalls, I ran into this a lot with students. As your GPS will take you really weird ways getting to Macomb from wherever you're from, okay? It'll take you on back roads that you really shouldn't be on any time, let alone in the snow, so there was a few times that I remember that we literally had to just leave people's cars where they were, and get people in our vehicles that have all-wheel drive and such to get them where they need to go, and then tow companies would have to come out the next day after things have been plowed. So that's another big thing in the winter.
We do even shut down roads here on campus occasionally. The big hills that we deal with that we will shut down, just shut them off, just right at view, that hill right there. we get some like bad ice storm or something. I've witnessed several people just not be able to stop going straight through there. And then on Sherman Drive where it comes down into Murray Street, sometimes we just, when it gets to the winter, we just always have a set of barricades that are just there. And then overnight, when it gets bad, we can just put it up and just turn around. It's just not safe to try and stop there. While the campus has its own physical plant, so ground services that come out and can spread salt and stuff, they primarily are responsible just for sidewalks and stuff right around the building. City of Macomb is responsible for the streets. Campus guys will still put some salt out and stuff in some of those real bad spots. But sometimes we end up waiting a little bit just so the city can get to it.
Another thing I had noted was just summertime. A huge thing for us is heat illnesses, okay? We, all our get up is probably 30 pounds of stuff. We have a vest that has no breathability under our uniform shirts, so when it's hot for everybody else, it's really hot for us. So we have to watch out for that, you know, our first football game of the year, I had to work and it was really hot and I probably drank 6 bottles of water staying hydrated. So that's a big thing.
Can you guys not wear shorts at least?
So we do have what's called a summer uniform, which is shorts and a polo shirt, but still,
You've still got all the same equipment.
yeah, you still got your vest, you still have your belt, you still
It's not
have.
the limbs, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the goal,
Yeah.
right? So,
So that,
speaking of warmth, I guess, to some degree, you know, one of the things that we deal with as far as cold emergencies, to backtrack to some of it, it's just dealing with exposure stuff to cold. And we certainly occasionally will have somebody who would be fine, who passed out, laying in the middle of wherever, and sometimes it's really cold. And there was one year we had, we get some pretty significant cold stretches, especially overnight, you know, negative degrees with wind chill and everything else. And so one of these nights, and I was working, and another guy stopped a car, and it was probably, it was -40 with the wind chill, right?
What year was it?
It's been, well, he's gone now, so it's been quite a while ago. Yes. But regardless, he stopped somebody, the DUI, he makes the arrest for DUI, which leaves me standing outside for 45 minutes to an hour, just while he's getting in his car, writing tickets and stuff like that. I'm the one standing outside. Anyway, it was a truck and it had like a roll top on it, right? So it was just, the bed was covered, but it wasn't a full topper. And, you know, we go to move the vehicle because otherwise we're gonna tow it. And then it's just sort of like, at that point, it's just sort of like, oh yeah, by the way, there's a couple people in the back of the truck. Oh, that's really good to know. And so we can get them out of there and they don't freeze to death overnight while you're in jail. So, you know, that type of thing, you know, even though it's Midwest, it's not like it's Arctic, but we can run into times where exposure to cold is a significant issue that we have to be aware of and pay attention to. In fact, the university they will cancel classes just for cold occasionally, just because they don't want students out walking. They don't have to, because the wind chill gets, you know, to the point where exposed skin can breathe.
we carry blankets actually in our squad cars for, things like that. The other thing is in the summertime when it's warm out, I don't have like stats for you guys, probably don't want that, but one of the things I was thinking about as I was thinking of things to talk to you guys about is summertime, you know, anytime it gets warm enough to be outside, people are outside, they're partying. There's a lot more interaction amongst people, okay? So crimes and problems go up when it's hotter. So that makes us busier in the warm time. On the flip side of that, when it's cold out, people are inside, and when you're cooped up with your family, you know, for a week at a time or whatever, and maybe school's been canceled, that can also lead to problems with people starting not getting along, you know, family issues, domestic problems, stuff like that comes up when you're like cooped up inside together.
And it goes along with when it's nice out, as people start to drink a little bit more alcohol. And when it's cold and they're stuck inside, they drink a little bit more alcohol, which both sides of it mean we're busier.
So people just drink and hate each other in general.
They drink when they're happy, they drink when they're sad, so, yeah.
Cause and solutions.
Of course. Alcohol is also, something that does dehydrate you, and so that contributes to heat emergencies and heat-related emergencies, because while they're consuming liquid, it's not being processed by the body the same way. So heat can become an even bigger factor in those services.
Another thing I had on my list of like heat related stuff is, here at the university, we don't have a K9. However, the state police, the city police, the sheriff's office, most of those agencies have K9s, okay? I'm sure you've all seen in the news where, a K9 gets trapped in a car and it ends up dying, and that's always a sad situation, but unfortunately, it's one of those things that the K9 cars are set up with door poppers, window poppers, fans in the windows, all these things to prevent an accident like that from happening. But some of it's all mechanical stuff. Sometimes it quits working, sometimes the air conditioning in your car quits working. So that's another thing related to law enforcement that you may not think of a lot of times, but it is certainly K9 handlers have to have that at the forefront of their mind a lot, so. Another thing in the summer, spring, just really any time is, that we run into is flooding. It's not often, but we do have roadways that get flooded. We have to shut down roadways. That causes people to hydroplane and causes accidents. A coworker of mine at the sheriff's office actually got a life-saving award in flooding because there was an elderly lady out on a back country road that went into some flood waters, got trapped in her car. As the police were, a majority of the time, were the first people to any emergencies, okay? The fire departments, ambulances, whatever might be asleep in the middle of the night, whatever, we're always out and about. So we're a lot of times the first ones to get there. So in that instance, he was able to he took off a lot of his equipment and was able to swim in there and basically rescue the lady. So that's not something we run into too often, but it does happen.
And floodwaters don't have to be very deep to be to the point where they really affect vehicles pretty heavily. It's not water.
Like 6 inches, right?
Yeah, or less to cover a road, at which point your vehicle can lose total traction and you can't move anymore. It's stuck. Honestly, University Drive floods all the time in the spot right there by West Gate. Just because the way they're designing the road, just it'll collect more water than the sewer system can handle. So that's pretty common. And some of those weather-related things that, types of emergencies that are contributed by weather and snow, right? So talking about hydroplaning. Again, on University Drive. I was working, different person, I guess. Couple people. We were working on just one, I think it was a fall night. Had been raining most of the day. Guy decided to see how fast he could get going from West Gate on University Drive towards West Quad. He got up to about 90 and he hydroplaned. Curb, rolled his car, it rolled 3 times. Passenger was ejected from the sunroof. So those are contributing factors that weather has a role in that you wouldn't necessarily expect because it wasn't actively raining, but there was still water sitting on the ground. So that all, anytime it's not just sort of a cool overcast day, there's potential for more problems existing, pretty much. And so, and we certainly encounter those, even on a small campus, even in the small area that we cover.
Another thing I thought about, I know I was on kind of a summer list here, but one of the things in the winter that happens, several years back, there was an elderly man that crashed in the snow, and it was one of those times where we were simply checking vehicles to make sure nobody was in them and leaving them, because it was just like, I think that people were calling it like snowpocalypse, it was just a mess. And unfortunately, in that case, you know, the next day when the tow was finally able to get out there, you know, there's snow 6 feet deep in a ditch, and actually the family of this elderly man called and they're like, we haven't seen him and whatever, and it ends up that he had got out of his car and fell down in the snow and nobody could find him or saw him, and he ended up passing away. So that's one of the big things in a lot of situations, you know, whether it be tornadoes, whether it be snowstorms, a lot of times it's best to be in your car. It's best to stay in your car, because once you get out, you're in a lot more uncontrolled environments. I don't know who we were exchanging the email with about this meeting yet. Okay. I know you said something about like forensic type stuff. I don't know much about that. Ted might know more. I don't know. One of the things I was thinking about, like evidence related, police related, is I was on a call here in town. It was basically a major crime scene. There was blood involved. Happened in the middle of the night, and it was an issue to where like we had a pretty large area cordoned off basically, and we're standing there like it's an all-night process. You know, state police is being called in, investigators are being called in for all sorts of stuff, and all of a sudden, wind starts happening, and then all of a sudden it starts pouring rain. And obviously this blood is evidence of the crime, and there's also, you know, things that we need to protect there. So we're calling on the radio, had the fire department come, and they had some pop-up like tent things to try to like put over this area of blood and stuff. So that's something that's huge with evidence stuff, in the snow and mud. Things I've seen used is footprints. You know, footprints are in the snow and mud and stuff, so that's something. I know we've had burglaries before where we stop somebody out, you know, in the middle of the night, and while you're talking to them, you say, hey, can I see the bottom of your shoe real quick? And you might catch it on body cam to where you can look at it later or know enough of the pattern. I see you wearing on cloud shoes, which I wear a lot, so those have a real distinctive, you know, pattern what I would recognize. So shoes have that a lot, so that's one of the things with evidence related.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, whether like anything outdoors is gonna be affected when it comes to collecting evidence, and that process can take an extremely long time because it can be very intricate, very detailed. And you're looking for a lot of small pieces of evidence. Sometimes you want to get everything because you don't know if it's going to be important or not. And so something happens, and it's just, you have to get what you can as quick as you can, and you rely on photographs more than we want to, and we don't get that opportunity to do everything we want with it. Like you said, there are pop-up tents, you know, bigger departments and stuff, they're gonna have a lot more types of equipment used for bringing big floodlights and, you know, to be able to capture things at night. It tends to cover up the scene, so they can just close it all off, take their time on it. Unfortunately, we really don't have that as an option, because and besides, like you said, the state police are probably going to come in. They have those resources, but it takes them a while to get there to get that option available. It's an outside situation. And then the other thing that has to come into play is we talk about exposure is one of the biggest things that you really deal with weather and police work, you know, on both sides. And again, when you're processing and seeing outside, that's going to take a long time. Exposure is one of those things you got to worry about, because you got to make sure your officers are staying safe and helping. You can probably just essentially protecting the scene. So there's a big component of weather and how to deal with that. So that's certainly plays a role.
A couple of just like miscellaneous things that I came up with too is, like I said, I spent over a decade working at 911, okay? And being on what I've always termed both sides of the radio, like this is one side of the radio, 911's the other side of the radio, okay? 911 is honestly a harder job. It's much harder. We can be one place at one time doing one thing, okay? But 911 dispatchers, they have everything coming at them at once and they have to deal with it all. Our 911 center here in this county has 2 people working with the capability of 3. That's it. So when major things happen, they're really bogged down. Our dispatch center here on campus has 1 person working all the time with the capability of 2, okay? So a lot of times they get bogged down.
What do you mean by capability of, like how many seats there are in the office?
Stations, correct, yeah, like stations with our computer system and our radios and all that. That's their capability.
Any major incident, communication is one of the most important factors to be able to get everybody to do their job where they need to be there and to understand what's going on. And it's not just communication with the officers, that's phone calls. You're bombarded with hundreds of them. You know, Western sends out an emergency alert, says there's an emergency, whatever that emergency is. As soon as that happens, our department starts getting phone calls. Lots and lots of phone calls, wanting to know if their kid's okay, what's going on, and you know, all these things, and we try to direct them to different places to call, but people know that number, so we told them to know that number to call us, and then it really quickly overwhelms the communication center to the point where they're not getting reliable information the way they need it to, and then they can't even really communicate that with the officers in the street. I mean, we had that, we had the shooting in Thompson a few years ago. And I think there were departments, how many different departments do you know or shut up?
I was there when I worked for the county and there was, I mean, all the surrounding counties, state police, there was
There were
a lot of.
8 different agencies, right? So now you talk about communication issues again. You factor that in with some sort of major weather-related emergency, like a tornado comes through and hits some fairly populated area, you know, you're looking at, depending on how big it is, I mean, we may not have the help we need in that circumstance, we did, because they weren't busy where they were at, but if it's a weather thing, it affects a huge area, so we're just really there to help, and so we're getting spread really thin, really fast, trying to just deal with all the problems. And communication is one of the major factors that get interrupted in that process all the time.
Something else that happens at the 911 center at our OPS here, at our dispatch center, is weather wreaks havoc on phone lines. When it rains a lot, there's water seeps into the ground, into phone lines, and it creates ghost 911 calls. So not only are you answering real 911 calls, you're also getting hundreds of calls that there's nobody there and it's just activated simply because water is seeping into the lines.
And sometimes you can get a location, and
Yeah.
sometimes it won't. And anytime we get a location, we gotta go check.
Power outages affect fire alarms, it affects all sorts of like business alarms. Power will go out, power will come back on, and now all of a sudden every burglary alarm in town's activated and you're like, most of the time you can attribute it to the power coming back on, but there's that chance that, hey, somebody knows that and now they're gonna burglarize.
Even like the beacon alarms we have here on campus, those have tamper alarms as well. So if somebody goes over and shakes a pole, it'll go off and they'll know it's a tamper alarm. Well, the wind, the bad rainstorm, we get, you know, all of those blue lights on campus going off and we gotta go drive by and check them all. Because if it really is an emergency, we want them there for people to use. I mean, because if they're stuck and it's that bad out and they need help, we need to know that too. So it complicates things.
Something else I was thinking of, it's not so much an issue anymore. Most of our communications anymore are digital, okay? It used to be in the time frame that I've worked and certainly the time frame that Ted's worked, we used to have analog radios, which weather would greatly affect your reception, your getting at, you know, being able to get to dispatch, get to other officers. And also it could be a completely clear night, there's no weather going on at all, and analog radios had that, you know, would have skipped, so you would be receiving radio traffic from St. Louis. That's just because the weather waves are just right, you know, that it activates our radios. So that's something, like I said, with the digital stuff, it's not so much an issue anymore, but a lot of fire departments, a lot of agencies still are on analog things, so that is something that's affected.
But then, again, just to get back on communication, talk about different agencies and the communication, ability to communicate between those agencies. So you get a fire department that's on an analog system, on a digital system. Now we can't talk to each other directly. We have to talk through dispatch and talk to them. And so it's just more little, I mean, it's a complicated process. I mean, we're not a real great solution. There are some solutions, but just never, usually they're really expensive.
Yeah.
So it's not really feasible for most places to do.
Just a couple other miscellaneous things I had. One is also related to communications. I'm speaking to an audience that's a little bit younger than I am. So this is, I don't know how big of a thing it is anymore, but when I had just got out of high school and I don't think I was ever in the weather club. One of the things I did, a couple of my friends were into ham radio communications, okay?
That's still a thing.
It is still, yep, and it's, weather spotters utilize it quite a bit, it is a thing. So if that's something, it's actually kind of difficult to get a license for that, you have to go through the Federal Communications Commission to get a license for that, and that's kind of difficult, but that's something, you know, that you guys would be interested in, it is certainly still a thing, it's definitely utilized a lot during times of severe weather.
Yeah. I don't know if you know who Jesse Grizzly is, he's a local guy that does some storm spotting stuff. He would be a person who would be worth reaching out to at your club. I'm sure he'd come in and talk. He's there at high school. And he does some weather stuff for WGM and he goes out and does some storm chasing stuff. In fact, that guy spends the summer doing that a lot too. He'd be a good resource to get in touch with as far as well.
A friend of mine, if you guys keep this in your head, to Google this when you're done, the name Brandon Sullivan, okay? He was a friend of mine, he was a big storm chaser. I was sitting down at home one night and I was looking through Netflix trying to find something to watch and there was some severe weather show popped up on Netflix and I looked and I'm like, that's Brandon. He had like a viral video that he had taped and he was screaming at the guy that was driving, they were storm chasing a tornado and he's like, his quote was 40 is not enough because they were going like 40 miles an hour or something. So if you Google Brandon Sullivan, you'll be able to see he's a local Macomb guy and he did a lot of weather chasing and has a lot of videos and stuff. So.
Speaking of weather chasing, have you guys ever had any issues? Because there's a lot of people that storm chase, obviously, and it's a big thing even within the storm chasing community. Do you stop and help? Or when they're driving through, is it more destructive? Like, I don't know if you guys have ever personally had this here in Macomb per se, obviously, but like considering surrounding towns have had tornadoes lately, how would you guys prefer, like, how would that work for you guys? Or like, what do you think about storm chasing and stuff? Like,
I mean, the issue you get into is you just get people who don't necessarily know what they're doing. And so they just think it's neat.
On that note, my last, sorry to interrupt, Ted, but I just thought of this, my last thing that I had on my list here on that note is in the springtime, if you guys want to watch the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I think it is, does spotter classes. And it's usually 4-H Center, Legion, maybe you're on campus. That's very good thing if you guys.
yeah, we always try to go to it. Some of the older people here have theirs. I unfortunately had to work my other job that day, but like we post about it too in club and stuff. But yeah, but like I know
So the issue is
Yeah.
people who are amateur to the point where they really don't want to help. When they get them, and in which case they can be for sure. And the problem is we can't tell who knows what they're doing and who doesn't know what they're doing in the circumstances. And so it can hinder the situation, but we're also usually, and this is just my personal take, I guess, is that we're usually busy enough doing other things that we're not stopping anybody who's doing it. But
You don't want them to be something else you have to,
It could become very annoying
yeah.
because it could contribute to the problem. I mean, that's.
Yeah, when I worked at 911, there was a guy that I don't even know if he actually was a spotter, but he would call in to 911 during what wasn't even severe weather, and he would like rattle off, he would never give you his name, but he would rattle off some number and use all these technical terms that you had no idea what he was talking about, and he'd try to report that there was rotation. So we would send police out to check, and there was no problem. But I think from that guy's standpoint, at least, he was just trying to make something more that wasn't there. I don't know, but so
And
there,
sometimes people do that because they want to see the response, they just want to see what happens. Right? What are the police gonna do when we call this in, and we'll see what there's.
Arrest the tornado.
That's why. And you know, there's a variety of different responses you can get from people, and sometimes they're very good and sometimes they're not, so. The problem is the ones that are not good counteract the good ones more
Mhm.
than they have to help too often. And this is not exactly on the same topic, but it's similar. When I did my undergrad here at Western, I did my internship in Juneau, Alaska, and they had a big bear problem. The brown bears would come down out of the hills and mountains, and they would come and they would look through garbage, basically. That was the biggest thing. It was a big tourist area too, and so there were a bunch of restaurants and stuff, and there are all kinds of laws about keeping your garbage secured and sealed up. Bears would get hungry and they come look. Well, the local people really didn't, were trying to protect the bears
Mhm. Mhm.
and would intentionally interfere with the police that were trying to chase the bears out of the populated area. And it's a similar type of thing in the sense that you get people who are trying to do what they think is best, and it could be harmful and damaging. So it was consistently a problem because then the bears would get used to coming down, and then eventually tourists would get trap them, sort of corner them, and then that bear would get aggressive, and then the only response is to deal with an aggressive bear. So, yeah, people can have the best intention, but the guy could have had the best intentions going in these, what he thought was, rotational cloud. Truth of the matter is, I was, not helping the system. The setup that works for. So I think we talked a little, what kind of weather emergencies that we not really talked about. Are there any that come to mind that we haven't really hit on that we deal with? Winter stuff, right? We get snow. The biggest thing is dealing with people that are out moving when they probably shouldn't be. And
maybe it'd be better to maybe mention like what the response on campus,
Sure.
Let's just say a tornado warning and you're in a residence.
Yeah, and we've got the weather alert system with the sirens that go off, and they test those every Tuesday at 10 a.m. every first Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. So you hear them regularly. If you hear them and it's not that, then that means that there is either a tornado that's inside it or high winds of 70 miles an hour. 70 is where it's at, right? And in those cases, what you get is an automated alert that will go through the buildings that have the fire alarms that are adapted with that system, so they can get an alert like that. And then they go through the beacon boxes. If you're out on campus, it'll tell you to seek shelter. And really, until and those sounds will keep going off until it's clear. So they won't stop, even as annoying as that could be. And so our big response is honestly just to make sure there are people out moving around. We're looking for people moving around. If it gets bad, we're gonna take shelter too. And then we're gonna go back and make sure we find people. We're looking for people who are moving around who got stuck and may have had something happen to them. RAs and staff in the buildings are all sort of informed on what to tell the students as far as where to go and how to be safe as you can. Union actually is one of the safer places because it's in the basement of Union. I think it was actually considered a bomb shelter too. Got categorized that way back in the 60s when everybody was worried about news.
Also, so Lee Hall is kind of like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like the Fort Knox.
Yeah, so it doesn't have
No
any
windows.
That's-
Yeah, not much glass coming in there. Earthquakes, we didn't talk about earthquakes. It's not really weather, right? Is that weather? Does that count?
I mean, the geography can kind of be counted if you're talking about faults being shifted from heavy rains and landslides, but not really. It's like very
Yeah,
abstractly.
we can connect, it,
Yeah.
try really hard.
Yeah.
Look, it's a natural hazard, it's still cool, who cares?
Um,
I would just say that there is a fault line that they always talk about. When I was a kid, we did earthquake drills, and I went to school here. And so it was like, because there is a big fault line down by St. Louis that it was predicted to have something big when I was in school.
do you guys use, cause we have a radar station within like here, and I know, was it 2 years ago? When that tornado outbreak happened? 2 years?
Yeah.
it'll be the same.
Um,
The industry, right?
yeah. That we had some of our major people that like, you know, not like, we don't have the freshmen just in there, like we can, but they're not the ones reading off the data, cause you know. It's the people that know what they're looking at, in a sense, supposedly. But, is that any help to you guys? Cause like we had one did a TikTok live and actually was helping answering people like, oh, it's in this area now, and like that was something too. But would that be something
Yeah.
that we could use more? I feel like that's not well known, like campus wide per se.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I would say that the information's only as good as its quality, right? So as long as it's good information,
It's better than the National Weather Service radar,
Which-
so.
and I think from that standpoint, I think that is good information.
Mhm.
And so getting that information out to people so they know to stay away from it.
I
I'm
would
always gonna
say,
have some people that use that as a way to go to that area.
Yeah.
I would say we certainly like refer to our phones, the radar, and refer to, you know, whatever weather, you know, you can pull up, but the official thing is always the NOAA,
Yeah.
the National Weather Service. And that's what,
That's what all our warnings and everything that are based off of getting that information.
and siren activation, that's all based on the towns named by the weather service.
I wanna ask, so a couple of times Macomb has had weather events where we could see for like a while that it was coming, right? Like, you know, we had that spring where a frontline storm came from the north. We had the industry tornado, I think Jericho came through here in the summer. Was that, I don't know. How do you guys, from a police standpoint, how do you like brace when you know something is coming? Do you have like set positions? Do you like?
Not on campus, generally speaking. We try to centrally locate, and so everybody can, because you don't know how many people you're gonna need for an event, right? Sometimes we'll call in extra people so we can be prepared. Sometimes we'll have, you know, just one hand. We're still gonna be limited to some degree on vehicles and stuff like that. There's only so much you can respond, but, we do not have set locations in the sense that, you know, there's gonna be a car here, and a car here, a car here. That is preset. Usually a supervisor will assign those things, right? They'll be on the supervisor to make those determinations. Who's gonna be where. So, we have pre-established landing zones and stuff like that. We feel like helicopters, if we ever needed to have a helicopter.
I don't know what even landing zones for cars.
And, you know, we've worked on having some pre-established areas for people. We just need to evacuate people to an area, from an area to an area. We've got some stuff like that set up. But specific locations that also go to.
Also, do you guys have problems with hailstones damaging your vehicles? Sure. Like, because a cop car is just a regular car with a bunch of extra crap on it,
Yeah,
right?
with lots of extra.
Does
crap.
it damage that stuff at all?
Sure. Yeah, and honestly, if it starts to hail, your supervisor getting on the radio and tell you that, hey, find some place to get on.
I'm not paying for all that. there.
So there are some places I can't, I mean, we've got our garage and there's a few other garages that we get in, there's some covers.
So if we see you under Casey's, you're not hitting gas, you're hiding the tail.
Maybe getting a donut.
Yeah.
Gotta get that donut when you're on shift. I mean, come on.
Oh,
Somebody
because
tried
they're
to hand me a
police.
donut.
Nice one.
I get to say that.
Donuts are delicious.
Somebody tried to hand me a donut at the homecoming parade, and I'm like, I'll be all over wherever picture taking.
I did a portfolio on an SRO and after asking him a bunch of questions, I was like, what's your favorite donut? Just as like a, then I got him a donut when I gave him my portfolio, so. Do you guys feel that there's a close connection with meteorology and like police work, or do you wish it was like, cause as we're like the new people, you know, we wanna see if there's things we can improve, or like as emergency managers, like a better connection within the communities. 'Cause
There's a connection in the sense that like we're affected by all of the weather stuff. More so than there's like an actual work together close to everything. Right, like, I mean, I think, like you talked about, it's really hot out, it's really cold out, people are outside or they're inside or, you know, whatever. So there's obviously a lot of connection with weather.
I think the biggest thing from a police standpoint, just from an overall perspective, is we just kind of roll with whatever comes at us. So like, if we know that there's gonna be storms of the night, you know, we might brush up on our policy of how to activate certain things or whatever, but as far as like, you know, a day-to-day basis, we just kind of roll with this.
But like for severe storms, do you think it'd be more beneficial to say have like a meteorology person that's more spot out to like say a tornado or something, like to track those for this district, or do you still think just kind of like, is there a way
I
to
think
make the
there's a-
connection closer or something like the community?
I mean, there to some degree, it's a numbers thing, right?
Mhm.
So, our obligation is gonna be different,
Mhm,
right? And so if we're together, then we've got two people with different obligations,
mhm.
right? And so that can be conflicting with what one person wants to really go and take care of or do or make. So putting them together in the sense of physically together, I think is probably, but I mean, it still kind of makes some sense.
Mhm.
But you have to have some pretty clear parameters,
Yeah,
right? Like, you're riding with us, that's it, you know, that type of thing, you know?
But like if
Because we
they're-
don't like to give up
Mhm.
control.
yeah.
So there are things that we have problems with,
Mhm.
and so, but I think that the knowledge and foresight would be beneficial at times.
So like if you were to have
Sure.
somebody that could call in like away from dispatch, so you know, they're not interfering with those calls, but to come be like, hey, this tornado or whatever is headed this way, like just be prepared that there may be calls from here or something, would that be better than like versus?
I think the thing
Physically
that
or-
would need, I think the coordination of that information is what really matters.
Mhm.
Right, so people who do that, if they coordinate, so they have a sort of a unified communication with the police,
Mhm.
that's the information that would be really beneficial, right? Individuals just calling in, whatever, doesn't work nearly as well as individuals talking to each other, and then that gets really.
Yeah. But like a
Right, is that what you mean?
professional standpoint of like, okay.
That's my perspective on it.
Anybody else have any questions, any?
Non-weather related questions worked.
Anything, emergency management questions?
Here's a funny question, just about general law enforcement. How long has your campus staff officers had your police cams that you wear?
I don't know, because like I said, I'm fairly new.
Longer than you've been here.
Yeah.
And I'm old enough that all the years blend together. So I think we've had them for 2.5 years. We've had them for maybe 3, because we had a bit of a time frame where we were just trying them out to see what program we wanted to use and experiment with a little bit, just to see what we wanted and what we liked. It's been about.
Now, how long do you think in general as a whole country has general law enforcement like been practicing using police cams for like the public
count
use?
in car.
Like 10 years, 15
I mean,
years?
if you talk in-car cameras too. I mean,
Cash cams I know have been around for like 30, 40
Yeah,
years
they've been
maybe,
around,
but
really.
what about like just like officer and officer cams?
They probably,
Definitely within the last 10 years. I mean,
Yeah.
locally, it's the state mandated it to where I think by next year, every cop has to have it. So, and I'm sure agencies do it different. Like here at OPS, each officer has their own camera. I'm sure smaller agencies have like where they trade back and forth or whatever, but
just,
um,
they're expensive.
Yeah,
And you gotta have the technology then to upload all that and download it and use it properly and be able to review it. It gets more and more expensive as.
Yeah.
Kind of, and everything has to get updated.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, there is a state mandate that requires. These are the departments that have it with that.
What I found funny was that it's a state requirement and the last ones that are required to have them are the state police, which I found kind of funny.
Interesting. So you guys have both kind of worked other places. You said like Alaska and then you did the 911 stuff. But do you talk to people per se? Like, do you ever go anywhere, talk to other officers and just like
We
different?
worked a lot here, I've noticed, like I said, I worked for the sheriff's office before this, so I had the whole county and a lot of times there were only two of us working. Since I've been working here at OPS, most nights there's four of us on of the night, so having that extra help is really nice. A lot of the things that I used to do, I was by myself. And so having that extra help is nice, and then another thing we do all the time is we help the city police because they, as most police agencies are right now, they're having staffing troubles. So a lot of times they're down people, so we help them quite a bit. In the summertime when students aren't here, we're still here. So we do have summer classes and things to do, but we help the city police a lot more even in the summers.
And we work pretty closely with the city for sure, but we were probably the most with the city, but like this week we had something that just the county guys came in and helped with too. We call them the state if we ever need something that has some more specialtiness to it, right? Like that accident I talked about in university, state police came in because they've got some people that can do forensic studies on skid marks, vehicle damage, and really recreating that scene. That they've got some specialized stuff. You know, we interact with the feds occasionally if we need to, it just sort of depends on the circumstance, that's called. But bigger than us would usually be the state police. And then just for additional, just bodies and resources, it's the city and the county. But even, Bushmill, or like I said, with that shooting we had in Thompson, there was, like 8 different departments that showed up. So we definitely have some cooperation with them. And then, as far as just interacting with, we do training. We've got training centers that are sort of stationed throughout the state, depending on the types of training, we'll go to those. And then we'll get an opportunity to interact with those people.
Anything else? Anything else you guys have thought of
Just
or?
one tiny thing,
Oh.
actually. So I live in Olson, and my window had the perfect angle for the whole shindig that happened. Earlier this semester. So I heard it was a great party, so I watched everyone like come in, like first OPS was there. And then suddenly the state troopers were here and I was like, oh, okay, it's something. And then, they got the rifles out and I was like, okay, come on, let's see if you guys have fun with that.
Yeah.
Right? How is that a transition? Because like, obviously, with all these larger people coming in, eventually, campus security is like, this is bigger than us. I mean, someone's like, is that transition smooth? Is it like?
Generally speaking, I think that, what happens is you set up a command center, right? Then you get representatives from those departments there.
Okay.
Kind of the heads of those departments, that then create this unified command structure.
So there is some paperwork on how it's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and for our standpoint, we were there longer than the other department. From span,
I mean, it is your turf practically.
virtually, I mean, it was the city's turf, but they were dealing with some stuff, and so we were the ones that were there to help sort of maintain it. And then, the command center was on campus, in Tanner Hall, so that's where people were going to meet and.
Really?
and stuff. So,
I saw an armored vehicle come up. I thought they used those sometimes.
well, I mean, they do, yeah, they have the armored vehicles, but where the actual center was for all of those, department heads to coordinate was the one thing.
So who owns the unmarked trucks? That was my question.
What?
Who owns the unmarked trucks? Which
Unmarked
station?
ones?
I
never seen it unmarked.
I don't even, you know what, I don't even know what you're talking.
I was say where I'm from in Kansas, even our city has money, doesn't have an unmarked truck.
So Lauren, any last words before you suspiciously disappear now?
I don't know what you're talking
We're
about.
all witnesses.
Sylvia has connections. I won't disappear. Just one last question, just because, what got you into law enforcement? Like, you know, everybody has a passion. We are obviously weather nerds, but why?
I fell into it. You know, I was going to school and you get to, you know, the end of your sophomore year and you gotta have a major. So I got into it. That's what it was. You know,
I didn't screw it.
I mean, you know, if I didn't get this job, I was gonna become a paramedic. That was what I was probably gonna do. I was always centered around the idea of helping people in service in that regard. So that was my path, I guess, but specifically police, it just kind of followed rules anyway, so it was easy.
Yeah, my neighbor actually next door to me growing up was a deputy for the sheriff's office here, so. The sheriff's office has their own cars, like they take home their cars, so it was always parked in his driveway and it just always intrigued me.
I lived in that one too.
So I got to know him and, you know, I called him when I was in high school and I'm like, hey, I want to do what you do. What's my foot in the door? And he told me, you know, either work in the jail or work in dispatch is a good foot in the door. So I chose dispatch and that's up next.
What brought you back to the area? Like you said you were in Alaska, so what?
I grew up here. My dad was a professor in the biology department, so I grew up in Macomb. So stayed in there. I left just for my internship, pretty much just because I wanted to go do something cool.
Cool in multiple ways. I think that's anybody else? Anybody else?
Oh, I got one more
Okay.
thing, one question. Does Macomb get like dust storms or like
Yes.
huge wildfire, like smoke issues?
I'm sorry, we did have a dust storm like 2 years ago?
I don't remember.
And it definitely gets dry enough and, you know, there are some pretty big grass fire and stuff, because it's a real issue.
Yeah,
That we always deal with every year, really, where grass fires and field fires start happening.
do you ever have to evacuate people like from their properties in case it got really bad at times?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could happen.
Okay.
Usually it's controlled enough before it gets to that point. It's very common.
Yeah,
Appreciate your time, guys.
Thank you.
We've got another training.
Yeah.
I see them, there's like that judo, karate, some martial arts place
Yeah.
over there past Tanner.
The police
They
force
went-
training.
Yeah, they're like, you know, police training here, is that still a thing? Do they still do that there? And that
In
Tanner's
the
never
shadiest
taken
looking building.
Well,
Yeah.
same building it's been like that for, 40 years or
Yeah.
something like that.
out.
Yeah.
The training is surviving the building.
It is, yeah. As far as I know, they still do some training.
You guys are supposed to offer self-defense class, correct? For,
Rap classes we do have.
is that in that building or how how are we supposed to, sorry, this is,
No, that's totally fine.
when I did orientation 2 years ago, where they're like, oh, we'll announce this especially for women, and then I have never heard it.
Is that the people who were certified as instructors, some of them had left for different reasons.
Mhm.
And so, we're limited on how many people we have that can instruct them. So that affects how much we can offer. If anybody's interested and they just want to contact, sometimes what they'll do is they'll just sort of get a list. If they get enough people who are interested, they'll find a way to make it.
Okay.
So you can just contact our department and say,
Okay.
hey, I'm interested in the RAD class. And they'll start with this.
Perfect. Okay, that was just a random. So, because my dad's a retired cop and he did the defensive tactics, and so he taught all that. So when we came for that, he was like, oh, you should do this. And then, of course, my 3 years here now, I've never heard anything, so like,
Yeah, and then they don't always all of a sudden it's super. Again, because right now I mean, it's
understaffed.
Well, yeah, we had one
Police-wide.
officer that was pretty heavily involved, but she passed away, and so,
Oh,
you know,
I get
some other,
it.
and a couple of people retired, and so
Mhm.
we're just, you know, it takes quite a while to get those people trained up.
Well, thank you. Wrote down the names. Okay, I'm gonna end the Zoom real quick.
Until I turned around that first time and I was like, oh, I think
Guys, I'm gonna be real with you.